Right. It's always one of those moments where you think to yourself, did I disable the new Mac OS presenter overlay, or are there going to be pink hearts flying all over the screen when I do that?
I love that. I love that.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name's Clemens, and I'm your driver for tonight, not your host. That is obviously Maria. Yeah, but I'll be happy to be your tour guide or your driver around the topic of infrastructure platform engineering. Um, so what oh, this is interesting. Hi, I am an AI assistant. Somebody dropped an AI assistant in chat. That's a first. Maria, you need to deal with that in the background. AI is everywhere now. Awesome. Right. Infrastructure platform engineering. So that's a very interesting topic for me because that is a topic that we've never talked about for quite some time. We were always talking about platform engineering, but we were dropping the infrastructure part and we were focusing very heavily on the DevX part, the developer experience part. Um, but obviously, there are two sides to almost any story, right? Like front ends and back ends, like Bonnie and Clyde, and DevX and infrastructure, right? One goes with the other, like peanut butter and jelly. So let's talk about the dark side of platform engineering today. And ah, all right. So to get there, I've prepared a little bit of an agenda for you. So first, we got on the same page, hopefully. Um, Then we'll take a little bit of a look at service delivery versus cloud providing, because those are the big two infrastructure providers. And then we'll take a look if the next slogan is as controversial as the T-shirt I'm wearing tonight for you. Yeah, so I'm wearing our DevOps is dead trademarked one. Let's see if silos are awesome to your liking as well. Um, then we'll take a look at an IDP, or if it can be a self-service vending machine and what that does even mean. And then we'll get a little bit of a demo going because who likes slides in the end, right? I'm a techie, so I need to show you stuff, not only talk about stuff. And off to the races. So to get on the same page quickly about us, who is hosting your show tonight? That's Humanitec. We serve platform engineers. We have a few products in the sector. Um, you can read quicker than I can iterate over them. Usually, we have a very good process of getting you from nowhere to somewhere, so from zero to platform. And we usually are able to scale not only your adventure pretty quickly, but we are also able to scale that for many of our customers. A few key facts on this slide. Marketing tells me I have to show you this, and I think it's even worthwhile to get on the same page so you know who you're talking to, who's talking tonight. Um, let's try to get a little bit near the topic at least. So what we usually try is we try to approach the field by looking at the pain points, the stuff that usually is in your day to day that surfaces in your direction, and how we can actually channel that through platform engineering to be not that painful anymore, but to go energy wise in a different direction towards a solution. So, and what we observe usually as pain points, or not only we, most probably you as well, is that there are developers who are looking at things like missing self-service. They are not autonomous. They need to talk to other people in systems, um, or need to talk to people through systems to actually get somewhere. And they have high wait times because of that, because that's transactional. Yeah? And as soon as two parties need to have transactional conversations all of the time, that's a sure recipe for madness. Our waiting times and slow go hand in hand. Cognitive load means they need to understand too many things which are not part of their core problem domain. On the other side, we have the I&O people, infrastructure and operations. So I always said the classical people manning the machine room of the IT of the enterprise, right? They have to care for the other side of the story. So missing self-service leads usually to a lot of tickets being generated, which translates to ticket ops. Yeah? Infrastructure people transgressing to be infrastructure ticket robot machines. Yeah? If something is configured by developers, manual reviews need to happen so nothing blows up in production. Um, if developers configure stuff, that's obviously a prime scene for low standardization and insecure configurations. So if you've observed any of these things happening, most of the time they also go hand in hand. There's always the question, this, right? And our idea usually is to look at the core value drivers, which can make you get away from there. Obviously, you're building a platform because all of that needs to somehow be covered by technology and people. And the technology is building a platform, and the people who are doing this is on the one hand side, as I said in the beginning, the DevOps platform engineers or developer experience platform engineers. Um, I'm always not so sure if automation here is the right keyword. Sometimes I usually like to better say experience because that's the core thing they are looking for. Um, but usually what they try to do is they try to automate to the max because that leads to a better experience. If it's automated and you can put a facade on top, then you can replace missing self-service with existing self-service. Yeah, you get the idea. On the other hand side, you have infrastructure platform engineers. They are the emissaries of the infra and operations people who join the platform team and care for the fact that whatever is being created on top of the platform is able to wrap the services that INO produces and is able to actually standardize everything in a way so that the INO people do not need to have that ticket ops problem anymore. And obviously, higher standardization leads to the fact that all of the other things go slowly away. Well, that leads to better time to market, cost goes down, innovation goes up, managers are happy. And we decided to actually turn that into a pyramid because if it was turned the other way around, it looked a little bit like managers were getting split by a vice. Right? So that's the business impact at the end. Okay, so this is the problem field. But what does that actually mean for INO? Right? If you've listened, I've talked about a lot of things conflicting or getting you to INO, but what I didn't talk about is the real interface. I just talked about the pattern, ticket ops. So let's look at that for a moment, because that's literally the point in service delivery versus cloud providing. Yeah. So the main problem is actually the interface. Yeah. The problem is not for INO people to build a robust service. That's what you're probably doing right now. You're probably providing database as a service. So if somebody wants to have a Postgres database somewhere located in your data center that you're caring for, that's not a big problem. The only problem is how to get it. Yeah. And that's what you see left-hand side. Yeah. Jira, our best friend, JSM, Jira Service Management. In this case, it's a Kanban board, so tickets go from left to right, from backlog to completion. And that's usually how people do that. I could have put any other kind of ITSM tool there, right? But the pattern is always the same. Yeah. On the other hand side, you have cloud providers. Yeah. And cloud vendors are notoriously good in building and exposing all kinds of interfaces. Why is that the case? Because that's part of their core business model. And it scales well with the number of customers because their investment into building a nice interface, building a nice API is actually covered by all of the customers, not just one. Yeah. I know departments usually do not have that luxury. Yeah? If they are able to provide an API for CRUD operations, that's about it. But where does that get the service? It doesn't get it to the point where it is as discoverable, as integrated, and as acquirable as it is on the cloud provider side, right? And that leads to the big conflict. Yeah? And also hyperscalers have the luxury of following what I call the split path model. Yeah. If you want really something really custom, no problem. Sure, you can go ahead, you can have that, but you have to care on your own. You want something managed? Sure, no problem. But you have to stay inside of the borders that I have drawn around my service offering. Yeah? And that effectively limits the number of invariants that the cloud providers have to care for with their operations teams. And that's a luxury that I know usually is not having because they are in the same company. They are much more addressable. It's much easier to strong arm them into a position where they have to cave in and either provide you another invariant or just have to take over the maintenance of something that is really custom, where usually you would say, no, I don't want to have this, right? For a cloud provider, it's no problem to deny that. There's not even a button. I want to give this VM over to you, yeah, for good reasons. So where does that lead to? Yeah, it usually leads to the place where something like this is being created. So this is one of our reference architectures for an IDP. And from our perspective, that's not a bad thing, right? All the important blue logos, which do have Platform Orchestrator or Humanitec in, they are on this page. So from our perspective, not a bad outcome, right? And the problem is usually that this is framed as a new world or future state. And it is very unclear how that will interface with all of the old world, which is usually the data center or things as a service in your company. And that makes the chasm, which is between what cloud providers are offering and what INO is offering, even larger. Yeah? And it makes the problem for people that want to use your services even worse. Because now they even have to justify why they are taking on the old world, even if it's much more cost effective or it's much more in line with their target scenario. So I guess that you would like to have something which looks a lot more like this probably. So once again, one of our reference architectures, but modified quite a little bit. So this is a hybrid cloud case. Yeah? And you still have a lot of the things that you did see on the first page. I would say essentially all of them, but you do not have just one resource plane. Yeah, so here still is Amazon, no problem with that. But you also have another resource plane here, and that one is based in this case on OpenShift. So Red Hat OpenShift, which you can perfectly run inside of your own data center. And in this case, you do, because this is your data center, and in there you see the services that the INO team provides. And they are very much in line with a lot of the stuff that the cloud provider provides, right? And the only thing that is in the middle is this gateway here, which ensures that both of them are addressable by the part of the platform which is caring for the developer control, or I would say customer control, whatever, or stakeholder control, because not everybody who's using your platform is a developer. Might be other stakeholders as well, like let's say data scientists who also want to consume quite a few services, right? And there is the integration and delivery plane, which integrates whatever is being requested with the world and delivers that onto the resource planes. Yeah. I know that this is not sketched out to the max. There is quite a few open questions in here. But the main question is, how do you make that happen? I mean, apart from pretty drawings, everybody can go to PowerPoint and create something like this. That's not a problem. What is the secret ingredient that makes this scenario possible? Because now all service providers have a seat at the table. And the interface for the customers is always the same. Yeah? And the answer to that is abstractions or interfaces and silos. Okay, so why silos? And why are they awesome? Let me give you a mental image. If you call out to a taxi service, cab arrives, driver waves hello, gets out and leaves. You load your luggage into the cab, you drive the cab to the destination where you want to, you pay via a payment service over your phone, you unload your luggage, and you leave exhausted. I bet you would like to be a consumer of a service that has clearer boundaries. Yeah. So call a cab, get your luggage loaded by the driver, enter, tell him the address, enjoy the ride. Driver gets you to the destination, takes your luggage out, you pay at the driver, he wishes you a happy day, you leave happy. Silos are awesome. Clear boundaries are awesome, as long as there is a good interface between. You can find that in the real world, in architecture and in concepts everywhere, right? For example, domain-driven design, bounded context, the core item in there. Service communication, sender-receiver contracts or APIs. The book Team Topologies, which has revolutionized how we think about corporate structures in terms of teams. Building and alignment of task-focused teams. Developers and infrastructure. Well, let's talk about this some more. Yeah? So how would I get there? How would I be able to let the people live in the confines of their silo, which in this case is a bounded context. So it's a clear definition of responsibilities, artifacts, locations, repositories, all of the stuff that makes your day to day, and have a clear interface around that. And one of the parts that we suggest you can use in this case is SCORE. That's an abstract format for developer self-service. What you see here is a YAML file, which allows the developer on a very abstract level to say, my product service needs these resources and not reason about any of the configuration, right? That PostgreSDB up here, the only thing that the developer cares about is that from this resource here, the connection string is fed back to his application, so his application can actually connect to the thing. Apart from that, he doesn't care. He just wants to drop his data, right? And the answer for the other side of the equation would, from our perspective, be resource definitions. They are a way for I&O teams or for platform engineers to set rules how resources of a certain type should be acquired or configured by context. So let's look at that. It's also a YAML file. In this case, this is a kind definition. We are talking about a Redis cache here. And the driver inputs. So a driver is something that actually talks to the end infrastructure. The driver inputs in this case are, hey, take this here from Git. Oh, and by the way, use the driver that runs Terraform. So this is Terraform here. And execute this if the environment we are targeting is production. That means I can have different definitions for different contexts. Development can look different than production. And I can configure that as it is needed. So we always had that little thing called orchestrator in the middle of those architectures. What does that thing do? It actually takes the resources which are required, creates a graph, and fulfills how these things are being created through the definitions and something possibly we call resource packs. So INO people, they actually provide the services, and either INO people or platform engineers, they use the format of the resource definitions to create an interface for their services towards the orchestrator. Now the orchestrator understands how to acquire those services. Developer, we had that score, abstract request. That gets pushed to the orchestrator. Orchestrator understands context because that comes from CI, looks up how to actually fulfill in the given context, and then creates a graph and materializes that graph by calling the drivers, which actually talk the services which need to be acquired. In this case, DNS record, I guess this looks like the Cloudflare icon, I think, MySQL database, and Kubernetes. Okay, so what else? Now we want to have a Redis cache. Next deployment comes around. So all we need to do is we need to look up, okay, for context staging, type is cache. Let's use Elastic Cache. Yeah. So interface, Redis, implementation, in this case, in staging, cloud provider, Elastic Cache. Okay, cool. Elastic Cache gets summoned from the application perspective. Now I have access to a Redis compatible cache. I can use it. Everything's fine. Great. But that could actually also be something running in your data center. Or it could be in development in your data center, in staging as well, but in production, cloud provider service, or even the other way around. Mix and match as you need. So that leads us to something that I like to call a self-service vending machine IDP. And I would like you, when I show you the demo, to have that as a mental model for a golden path. So how does that look like? We have developers. Developers do not want to do anything fancy. They just want to get something prepackaged from our vending machine. And the vending machine and the packaging is actually provided by the platform engineers. They are facilitating this transaction. This is the platform, right? And the infrastructure engineers, they are providing the contents of the boxes. And they are caring for the fact that if the box is happily used by the developer over here on day one, if they keep using it on day 2 or day 2000, the box content is still fresh and according to what is needed by the developer. Yeah, just the transaction is facilitated by this machine here in the middle, which is the IDP. There are quite a few more stakeholders you could have at the table if you look at it from a more schematized view. Yeah, so we are not talking about security here, compliance, legal, actual cross-cutting concerns inside of an enterprise. These are just the main stakeholders. Right? So I've talked enough. Let us take a look at how this could look like in reality. Okay, so now I think I need to actually show my entire desktop. Okay, great. That's hopefully working. Maria, tell me if it's working.
It is working.
Nice. And as always, I am going to start on the terminal. I'm going to change into one of my reference architectures. You can see that by switching into this directory, I am setting the whole development context. All my tools are configured now. A little tool called dir, worth looking up. It's great tooling. So we are talking about, we are seeing AWS in this iteration. If you're interested in seeing a different cloud or have a version of a demo and a deeper discussion customized to your company, your cloud provider, your infrastructure in your data center, well, look me up, give me a poke. We can have that. Tonight, AWS. All right, so what am I going to do first? I am actually going to use a little shortcut, which is using in the background the platform already to look up the target URL under which my entry into the IDP is being made tonight. And that is Backstage. And as you can see here, setter field, poros consume, whatever. I don't remember that one. So being able to look that up through an API consistently is the first thing that is nice. So why do I even have Backstage? To have this little blue button, because I want to show you things. And for that, I need to basically start a new project, right? So I'm going to choose my pod info service template and pick the name jtest11 because pod info does not give me any infrastructure. It is just a starting point and I can go from there. But I'm getting everything pre-configured. Yeah, so I'm getting an ECR repo where my image is being dropped. I get a Humanitec app, which is the connection to the orchestrator, and everything is there now. Inside of my own GitHub repo, which has a score file. That score file says, hey, my name is jtest101. What is being part of me is being set by the pipeline. I'm a good demo, so I have a hello world combination in the variables here. And I would like to have a DNS name because my creator hates typing IP addresses. And apart from that, what I get as well is here a deploy YAML. And that means I have a pipeline in the background based on GitHub Actions, which is actually building the thing and firing it over to the orchestrator. I'm still seeing a yellow dot here. It's pending, so I still have to keep talking. Will hopefully be a green check mark soon, but I do not trust the WebSockets in my home network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Humanitec. This is the orchestrator. You can see the application is already here. I can go into the development environment. It's already deploying, which means we are close to getting a green check mark. So it starts as unhealthy. This is a Kubernetes effect, right? If you put a manifest on top of a Kubernetes cluster, you give it a desired state. It says, I would like to have 3 containers, but obviously you start on 0. So your workload is unhealthy until it has scaled up to 3, and then it is healthy. Okay, so we have that. So this is my workload. The DNS record is here. I can look in there. I can see that there's another name I would have never guessed in the first place, but there's pod info up and running. So it was really easy to get that. But obviously, this is not where the magic happens. So let's take a look at where the magic happens actually. And this is still the score file. And I'm going to go directly into GitHub here, and I'm going to edit it. Simply ask for a little bit of infrastructure. In this case, I would like to have ready the Redis. Why not? I'm going to commit those changes, try to be my work self, and ignore any best practices. Commit that right here to the main branch. It'll take a moment, but then if I look over here, this will change. Bear with me for a minute. There you go. So what happened in the background is the pipeline got triggered again by my commit. Image got built freshly. Score file got projected towards the orchestrator. And now I have the new one running. Once again, I take a look at my workload, and now I can see I have ready the Redis. Yeah? This is an in-cluster Redis, so it's a container running directly beside my workload. They are cheap and fast. It's great to have them for those cases where you just want to have a development environment and you don't care for doing anything big because it needs to be cost effective before anything else. Or if you want to have ephemeral environments. Yeah? So up and running, great. And the question is, how did that happen? If you think back, there's a resource definition here. If I go to our resource management, I can see the matching criteria, which says resource class is default, nothing else. So whoever asks for Redis is going to land here. And if I look at the configuration, this is creating a deployment YAML. So it's actually creating this container which runs inside of my cluster. But this could be anything, right? I could also call out via Terraform to a cloud provider's API and create any kind of service, or I could call out through the interface that you have designed in your INO team for the service that you're providing, could call out to that interface and create an instance of your service and fulfill the developer's needs through that. And this is essentially how this comes true. Now you have a seat at the table. You're on the same flight level as a cloud provider because the interface for the developer, when he asks for things, is always the same. Yeah? And from our perspective, this is how infrastructure platform engineering should look like. Because service providing has never been a problem. People in INO departments could always do that. The problem was just how to get that in a packaged form, in the right format, to the customers in a way that they like it. And this is literally how it's possible. I haven't shown you a lot, right? I could show you a ton of features around our products, but essentially, I don't want to pitch our products. I want to pitch a pattern to you. I want to pitch a way of working. I want to pitch um, the discipline of platform engineering. You could take a different product than ours. There are quite some other orchestrators out there. You could take a look and find the one that suits your needs best. And still, I do think that if you stay true to these patterns, then you will be creating a very good platform from the perspective of the users, but also from the perspective of the infrastructure people. Because if you do not care for the fact that they still need to care for every instance that the platform creates, you will just move the problem to a different silo. And an uncool one, which doesn't have a good interface, where the problem stays and rots until it explodes in your face. And this is what I would not suggest. All right, so you've had a little demo, a 10,000 feet eagle perspective demo. I would say that's enough. I'm basically at the end of my run. Usually I now show a slide which says questions and hopefully answers. But I guess we can do without the slide. Or what do you say, Maria?
I say let's go, Clemens. Thank you so much for amazing presentation and demo. I love demos when you do them. And let's get to questions. So we already have the first question here in the chat. Can you speak a little bit to your experience around change management, adoption, and culture barriers?
All right. Yes, I can speak to that for days. So if you can pinpoint me to a more precise thing of interest, I might be able to quickly speak to that on a very generic level around these topics. My experience is that change management is something that comes from lack of automation. First of all, because if we're talking about an automated process, which does not take any side steps, then it's every time you call out to that process, also documenting the inputs and the outputs, and you have a clear process definition. And by that, you do not need to have change management. Yeah, because the discipline of change management is literally that, creating the awareness that something is happening from a process that has inputs which still need to be gathered sometimes, which needs to be driven in a lot of things throughout. And in the end, yeah, needs to be documented so that you have a compliance relevant record of what you did. And that's literally what we try to fight against. Right? If you have a golden path, and golden path would be something that we would also call a happy path, then that means you're walking the path where nothing can go wrong anymore. Right? And that's what we try to achieve. So we basically try to go against a lot of things that are ingrained into change management. Because change management as a discipline most of the time means interruptions of a process, manual work, reviews, and so on, right? And that's literally what drives time to market into the ground and makes people frustrated because they can't act autonomous. So adoption. Um, I can't talk a lot to that. Why? Because that's such a broad field. It's a general mechanism. Build things that people love, people will use them. Simple as that. What that means in reality, um, as I said, I would need to have a little bit more of a precise query to speak to that one. And cultural barriers, oh, there is always a ton, right? Um, as soon as you try to introduce abstractions, it's always a fact that you, at first, people feel like you're taking something away from them. Yeah? And this is the most critical point when you work with a platform or when you build a platform, because if you do not have an abstraction, you're not actually building a platform, because then you're not making nothing more easy. So the trick when doing this is layering abstractions and finding the right level of transparency and actionability. So if I have different layers of abstractions, I will only be able to confidently use the top layer abstraction if I'm able to peek all the way down and see and understand what the system is doing for me. And if I can do that, I can build trust towards the system and I can lean back confidently into the abstraction, because if anything goes wrong, I know at any time I'm able to find out what's happening behind the scenes. It's just that I do not need to tweak every little lever myself, yeah, because it is convenient. Nobody wants to have a TV screen that has 300 knobs where you can fine tune everything. You want a remote so you can sit on your couch, push the button, and watch your favorite show. And developers and infrastructure, it's the same pattern. If they tell you something else, secretly inside, they just want their remote and the popcorn bowl, right? So you need to keep that in mind. But build things that people love and they will use them. Make transparent what happens so people are able to lean back and trust the abstraction. Um, that would be my biggest advice towards cultural barriers. But there's a ton of other ones. So yeah. Does Humanitec have a partnership with Red Hat? Yes, we do. Simple as that. Um, Actually, I have been talking to peers at Red Hat just recently, and we haven't announced that thing too big because there's PlatformCon around the corner, So I'm not yet allowed to really pop the bottle of champagne and say, look, it's there, but you get a sneak peek, so to speak. We are releasing a reference architecture for OpenShift together with Red Hat, which is being announced big at PlatformCon. So I can't talk to the details. So I think I'm not getting a good grade from my boss. Yeah, but that's what's coming around the corner. And also, if you want to have any kind of conversation, either Red Hat side or the Humanitec side, or as both together, just poke one of us and we will be able to facilitate that. No problem. Right, PlatformCon, awesome link. Thank you, Maria. You should definitely be at that one. It's coming up in just a few weeks, and we estimate that thing to be big. It's the biggest virtual conference for platform engineering on the planet. Last year, we had quite a few requests towards public viewing events, at least, because we're not going to make that conference physical. Yeah, but we're going to have public viewing events. One big one is in London, for example. I know that Caspar is going there and facilitating that one. I know from another one, which is happening in Germany in a little town called, thank you very much, St. Augustin. Now that's a shame, you know that one, but you don't know where I'm. I need a sip of coffee to come over this.
Yeah, it was easy to
Orange juice free. So, St. Augustine, there's one a little bit smaller, but I'm probably going there. It's facilitated by another one of our partners, Bechtle, which is doing a lot of high security government implementations all over Europe. So we have a broad partner network to care for your needs. But as I said, I'm for sure wearing a Humanitec hoodie most of the time, so I talk to that as well. But my main intent is to pitch a pattern towards you.
Perfect.
All right. Any other questions? I'm totally oblivious of the Q&A and I only see the chat. Anything in there?
Yeah, everybody liked the chat more this time. But what would you say the best next step? Because I know that you like to advise and just like go and test around and play with it. So what would you say is a good next step for people who attended this session?
Right. That's actually a good question and depends a little bit of where you're coming from. I always like to say, just go to our webpage, take a look at the reference architectures, pick the one that suits your tech stack best, and try it out. Why? Because with the reference architectures, they are completely terraformed. They might not be 100% what you need, but they are an awesome starting point and a great way for experimentation. You can have an IDP, like I've shown you, up in under 1 hour. Yeah, so combine that with the resource packs. We also have those targeted at the cloud providers and the in-cluster resource pack. So you do not need to figure out how to get your own services or the cloud provider services integrated with the orchestrator. That comes pre-configured. So you can actually test drive that and find out if it's the right thing for you. Or you could show it to some of your developers or some of your peers and ask them how they feel about it. Get a first feeling. How that pattern or how those products would actually shape your day-to-day and the way how you think about building a platform. That's always my biggest advice, kick the tires. Don't spend months at the drawing board because IDPs need to care for so many people and so many cases. And if you look at them all, you will have a very detailed understanding of the world and nothing that you've built. Yeah, well, that happened to me quite a few times in the past as well. So that is something I would advise you to do. Do not spend too many hours at the drawing board. Kick the tires and let reality inform your strategy. That usually works quite well. And
Write
apart
it
from
down.
that, go to PlatformCon. Take some of the great talks there or watch some of the great talks there. Go to platformengineering.org, the biggest platform engineering community on the planet. Join the discussion. Bring some questions. Bring a good attitude. Hit me up at Jay. That's me there. And yeah, have fun building.
That's the most important thing. So with that, I guess if there are no other questions, thank you so much, guys, to everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Clemens, for driving this session. As I promised, we'll send over slides and recording to everyone tomorrow. And hope everyone has a great and a safe end of the day. And yeah, have fun and build platforms, I guess.
And thank you very much, Maria, for being a wonderful host.
Thank you,
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day or evening or whatever. Don't drink coffee with orange juice.